Okay,
I'd like to call this meeting to order. Please join me for the pledge of allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
we'll start off with a roll call. Jackie Boyd.
Here.
Lawrence Lewis of Davis,
Orange stays here.
Fraser McPhee,
Here.
Bert Lemon,
Here.
Mark Manley,
Present.
Jeff Gilmore, Glenn Tillery,
Just. Here.
Glenn Tillery, and Jeff Gilmore,
Present.
and Glenn Tillery, okay, and Mayor Lindsay. We have a quorum, we have to proceed.
Okay. Well, unfortunately, we didn't get posted on the minutes we will need to elect a chair and secretary. But it's not on our agenda at this meeting, so we'll need to make sure that that's done at the next meeting. So really, our only topic of discussion is the transfer of the Colfax County Airport to the Village of Angel Fire. And as you all know, we've been discussing this for some time and have brought it before the county. The county is very amicable to working with us to see this happen. But before there's any formal action, they had asked basically that we put together a plan on what it would take, number one, they're putting let's see what it would take to transfer the airport. And if the transfer was to take place, how we would operate the airport going forward, what our goals are, how it would be beneficial, not only to just the Village of Angel Fire and Moreno Valley, but to the county as well, having it under the management of the village. So with that, I want to thank Jeff Gilmer for providing a lot of information as far as the steps, as far as the FAA is concerned. He has a lot of experience with the FAA and some other documents that we'll need to get familiar with, airport governance and ownership. I also want to thank Fraser McPhee for providing a spreadsheet of an SWOT. You can speak more to that, Fraser, if you'd like. But just information, basically, our weaknesses, opportunities, and our threats. Also, I provided, and there's copies of all this on the back table for anybody in the audience that'd be interested. We have presented this to our legal counsel, and they have put together our general to-do list, which we're wanting to get started on. So with that, I'd just like to open this up for any discussion. Thoughts on how best to, for this committee, to help make this a reality for the Village of Angel Fire.
Quick question, Jeff, did you provide him with the 19-page document from the FAA? That's the same one that I sent you a couple of months ago?
Yes.
Okay. I just want to make sure they were in some.
I guess to make it, we need to come up with a plan for the county. What I'd like to see from this committee is cooperation in putting that together, because I do believe we all share the common goal of moving the airport from the county to the village. And again, stating the obvious reasons why we feel like it would work better, and how we see operating the airport going forward. I can just tell you first, I don't have a lot of airport or pilot experience. I have zero. I'm not on aviation at all. But what little I do know, for the 20 years that I've been here, I haven't seen a lot of, if anything, facility seems to be waning versus getting better. And I do know from other resort mountain towns, when you have a successful airport, it really adds to the success of the area in general. And even if there is financial cost to operate that airport, the revenue that would generate would far exceed, in my opinion, those costs. And I know it would be a big for our guests and pilots and all our business owners as well. So again, that's my thoughts, but again, I don't have a lot of experience with the airport. So if anybody would like to speak.
I can say this, I've flown into a lot of airports, I'm a pilot, I've flown into a lot of airports around the country. Some really well-run airports and some really poorly run airports. And they do present a tremendous opportunity if they're well-run. This is not an incrimination upon the existing staff. These guys do a great job of what they have to work with here at this airport, Scott and Joel. But there's just a unrecognized opportunity with this airport. The lack of investment in infrastructure, the lack of investment of a fixed base operator that's there, 7 days a week and can provide services. I mean, there's just a tremendous opportunity that if the village were to take this over, I feel like we could really make this airport a very well operated entity, which it's not right now. And that's because Colfax County doesn't seem to care.
Well, not to pick on Colfax County, but again, they're an hour and a half away. And it's just not right in front of them. Again, I do want to commend Scott and Joel for the job that they do. Again, they do an amazing job with the limited resources they have. To Glenn's point with the county too, I'll just point out a few things. I understand that currently the county is struggling with some finances. They're actually looking to cut the airport budget to try to save money countywide. The other big issue there is we have some active grants. The county has active grants at the airport. One to build a new hangar. They've had this money for some time now. I don't know that we even have a design decided on at this point. But the bigger issue too is they are responsible for matching a portion of that grant. And I don't think they have the funds to do it now. The other one is we were just issued, and Mr. Manley might be able to speak more to this because he was involved with the county receiving a new rural air transportation grant. But again, the match may be questionable at this time. And so these are both things that we really feel like need to happen at the airport. And we have an opportunity to, and we just don't want to see these go by the wayside.
I think that it might be useful. It seems like all the stakeholders want the transfer. The county, the village, certainly the resort. The public is here, which is great. And we may need to have some discussions, but I would like to focus on what needs to happen to make this a reality as quickly as possible. Because I would echo Glenn's statements. The county's heart is not in this airport. And they have serious fiscal challenges. It would be a shame to see the Rural Air Service Enhancement Grant be unutilized because the county can't meet the match under the program. The resort's already agreed to meet 50% of the match on its own. And that stands whether the county or the village runs the airport. But just to back up a little bit, I was a 20-something-year-old attorney in Vail when there was the hangar that's there and the airport there was just basically a tin structure. And, you know, now it is an incredible airport. And that was the single biggest factor in making Vail a tiny little town to what it is today. I'm not saying that that's where we ought to try to shoot for. There's a lot of things that are problematic with how big that place has become. But you know, you've got to start somewhere. And right now, getting some charter flights in here even on a limited basis. You know, you have to take steps, build the foundation to ultimately have a regular carrier scheduled flights, which I think is what we should shoot for. And we got to look down the road, you know, 5-10 years, where do we want to be? But it starts with the very first step. Like the mayor says, I mean, there's the county itself has got some challenges. So if we are all in agreement, certainly we should discuss it. And anybody that came, you know, bothered to take the time to come to this meeting has some things to say about their feelings about whether the village should take this on. But I'd like to just get going and focus this committee on what needs to be done to do this correctly, properly, and quickly. You know, the winter season's going to be on us right away, and you know, at least having a plan in place between now and then, I think would be a great benefit to the community, the county, and obviously the resort. So those are my thoughts.
I think one of the first thing that needs to happen is a business plan. We need a plan. Everybody's gonna wanna see that. The county's gonna wanna see it,
That's
the
what
village is
they're-
gonna wanna see it, the resort's gonna wanna see it, the public's gonna wanna see it, the taxpayers are gonna wanna see it, you know, I think that's where it all really needs to start, is what are the revenue projections, what are the expense projections? What do we anticipate the benefits to the village being, you know, where are we gonna invest infrastructure in the future? How much is that gonna cost? All of
So,
that.
and then again, that's exactly what the county, that was the first thing that they asked for as
Yeah.
well. And so to your point, yes, that's what we need to focus on, and Mr. Manley's as well. Jeff Gilmer had his hand raised.
Actually, Jim, first,
Okay,
Yes, if I may, any plan you envision should include more hangar space here. I've had a personal aircraft for 25 years. I've had a place up here for 20 years. I have never flown my airplane here because it would have to sit out on the ramp. With the hail and some of the weather that we have here, people who invest in a personal airplane are quite often spending money beyond what you would consider normal. And they don't want to see that aircraft damaged because there is no place to get it out of the sun, the wind, and the hail and so forth. So a hangar should be a significant portion of whatever this plan.
so again, I'll let you know that there is an active grant to build a new hangar. We have the opportunity to do so now, or the county does. And again, that money has been allocated. But and Mike Provine is joining us via Zoom. He may be able to speak more to where they are in that process. But from my understanding, they're still not even in the design, but the conceptual. Fraser, you may be able to speak to that too. In other words, there's discussion over one large hangar or 6 small hangars. And I think that discussion is still active. I don't know that that's been resolved.
If I may, could I backtrack just a second,
Please
and we
do.
can just go into this, the SWOT,
Yeah.
strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Part of any business plan is to analyze the current, existing facility, and that's why I put this together. I do apologize for the presentation of this spreadsheet. I am lacking Microsoft Excel at the moment, so it is a very simple looking spreadsheet done on my iPad. I actually printed out 7 copies here of an amended version because there's a mistake on the version I sent you, Mr. Mayor. But this puts a value to the facility if you start putting numbers to each of the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. which is the very start of putting together a business plan and a cost to the facility so that, you can come to an equitable agreement between Lincoln County and the village on how this thing's gonna get transferred. So if anybody wants to read that and go over it and has any questions on it, the error that's on the one that you have is I said that we have a lack of RNAV approach and departure procedure for runway 17. I actually meant runway 35, the one going in, so that's really the only error there. But if anybody's got any questions on that, if they've seen it now, please feel free to speak up. You'll see that on the threats, the first thing on the list is lack of a business plan.
Frazier, what are the minimums on the RNAV approach?
1400 AGL, I believe, are the minimums coming in on 17, which are very high. And that is
1600.
It's 1600 actually. Yeah, I think maybe we were trying to get it down to 1400. Say again, Jim?
Visibility requirement.
Depending on class, it's from 1.25 miles up to 3 miles.
So
Yeah,
a D is a 3 mile,
yeah.
and that's basic VFR for higher minimums.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
Mike Provine here. I can comment on the hangar design if you'd like.
Please do.
We're in the final design of the hangar design. We're going with the 4-unit hangar. We are also replacing the door on the existing hangar as it's in bad shape. That grant is provided by New Mexico Department of Transportation Aviation Division. It's 100% grant, so there is no county match, depending on the cost, the bid, if you will. So we're finishing that up, and I would, we will get that out to advertise probably, bids probably October or so we'd see construction next spring, is what our hope is. We previously bid a hangar design up there, and Fraser was airport manager at the time. Went with that same type of design, where it'd be 4 units. That cost came in too high at that time for the funding that was available at that time. So we've got a little bit more money. But we've also added the replacement of the door on the existing hangar to that. So that's the update.
Okay, I appreciate that. And then that money is available to you through the end of next year, is that correct?
No, the money is actually needs to be spent by, I think, sometime in 2026.
Okay, so we're still on track to.
Yes, sir.
All right, wonderful. And then there was also a grant, if I'm not mistaken, for an upgrade to the runway lighting.
There's no grant yet, but we opened bids on the runway lighting basically replacement. FAA is working on that grant. We submitted a grant application. We anticipate FAA making that grant offer here in the next couple of weeks. Due to the time of the year and getting lights and cans and all that ordered and all that, we would probably see that construction next spring as well. And we would be replacing, we think, if the money's available with FAA, we would be replacing the Classy on runway 17 with PAPI. And then replacing all the runway edge lights with LED lights, replacing the rotating beacon, replacing some of the work in the electrical vault and the supplemental wind cones.
Is there any other grants that you're currently applying for, or open grants or projects that you have slated for the airport currently?
We are finished up construction wise with the apron pavement seal. Upcoming, depending, a lot of dependings on FAA money available are the taxiway A. The big ticket would be the taxiway A reconstruction, which is a few years down the road. Just due to the funding limits.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, ma'am.
would we be able to get a list of all the grants that are pending along with some time frame?
Yes, I will have that for you at the next, prior to the next meeting. Sorry, Scott.
Yes, sir. Mr. Provine, any grants for the containment and the covering for the self-serve?
Oh, yeah. Good. Thank you, Scott. There are state grants for adding a cover over the some sort of a cover over the fuel dispenser, fuel farm. And also we have to, the county needs to build a containment for the when they're offloading from the fuel tanks to the fuel truck. So we our plan there is, since we'll have hopefully have a contractor building a hangar and doing some concrete work, we would couple that with the hangar construction and bid as well. But those are 2 state grants that are out there as well.
What is so I know you've had a hard bid on that door replacement, so what's the money available for the new 4 hangars?
The grant, I think, is about $1.2 million, and that includes the hangar and the doors.
If I was at that meeting you let me join, I wanna say it was the quote for the new door replacement around 200,000.
Yeah, we that was a necessarily a quote, but that was our cost estimate at the time. Yeah, so it's around 200,000. We're having to build some structure to mount that door to. That, as you all know, because you all live up there and frequent that area, work in Angel Fire is a little more expensive than, say, in Albuquerque or other places. So that's part of our struggle or challenge, if you will, coming up with cost estimates. But yeah, we were looking at $250,000 for the door.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Gilmer?
Mr. Mayor, there is precedent, legal precedent within the FAA's airports division for both a county and a civil, like a village like ours or city, to cooperate in sponsorship of an airport. Okay, the very small percentage that do that. However, as you know, my kind of position with all of this, I'm kind of with Mark over there. There's a lot of stuff floating around. It has been for several years now. Work that's not being done, money's not being spent. And so I'm proposing one, I don't know, I'm gonna back up a second. Do we need to have a formalization of this committee?
So again, the committee it's a formal committee.
And are we there already? We're done, so we can divide work at this point, okay?
Yes.
And secondly to that, so I don't forget, can we disseminate information amongst the folks?
Yes.
Okay, all right, and then the village can make that public however they want, all right, so back to this. What I propose is legally, we begin to look at how we can share, because you're all talking like we run this airport, we don't. The county does, the county holds all of the strings right now. That we somehow look if there's a legal way to take some of that responsibility from the county and the village begin to make decisions while we process the ADO application. The ADO application is not a simple, quick thing, Mark. It's, I've been involved in a lot of certifications with the FAA. It can take a year or two to move through. So it's not gonna happen between now and Christmas. And it didn't a year ago when we were having the same discussions.
Yeah, I think what I meant is the process itself. I understand it's gonna take quite a long time before control is actually legal.
It's actually legally
Transfer,
So
yeah.
in that meantime, we could look into, this is what I'm proposing, that we could look into sharing that responsibility legally. So we can help the county move on the decisions that are made by the village. This is the village, we'll make recommendations and move that forward. So the first point being, the very first stool we heard, leg of the stool, the 3-legged stool is the willingness of the county to move the asset, or it's called sponsorship within our airports to here. Great, that's great. And we know that the village wants to do it, but now we have to start that process. So that's what I'm proposing, is that we look into that as soon as possible. I will tell you this, that our airport's representative has no bandwidth and no time to work with us at least until October or November of this year. This is the end of the quarter, and she's already said, she even has to ask her boss to send something as simple as a, 14-page document. So that's kind of where I'm at.
Would an MOU
Don't know.
serve that
So
purpose?
so if you look, and again, you just got this morning, but our council, the number one on our general to-do list is for the Colfax County Commission needs a resolution.
Yes.
And the Village Drain Department needs one as well. So we're drafting ours currently and asking the county to do the same.
Right, and Jackie's correct, it could be something as simple as an MOU, not likely knowing the federal government, but, but I think that would be the laser focus is to start there so we can move on these things.
But you're-
Instead of just talk about them.
You're saying that there's an FAA provision that would help,
Precedent,
there's precedent.
there's a
that-
precedent,
That would help facilitate this.
that's correct, and in fact, if you look.
Doug, do you know, sorry, go ahead.
Just if you look on the National Academy, the giant lawyer 71-page document there, if you look on like page 3, you'll see the percentage there that are cooperatively governed is only 3%. But that's still a precedence.
Okay, so in that precedence, would there be guidance for the county and the village council? I know what I would ask for, so unless you're a dedicated aviation attorney, we're gonna have to kind of suss all this stuff out, knowing the village council and the county council. I don't believe anybody has specific, years of aviation experience. We may need some of that, but do you know if there's anything in that precedence that you mentioned that could at least point us in the right direction, how the FAA, the county and the village can work together to get rolling on this? There's a question in there somewhere, but.
Yes, no, I heard the question pretty loud and clear.
Okay.
No, I
Okay,
do not know of any specific guidance outside of the guidance that airports has for operation. The specific guidance is gonna come from legal in Washington, and they're gonna say, this is how those 3% operate. This is how they cooperate between a county and an entity like us. So that's where we need to start. We need to find that human being that we can ask that, your question too. How do we put that piece together and then begin the process? It sounds to me like all this talking, again, this is just opinion, that everybody's ready to do it, including the county. But that might be the starting point. Wow, is it when you read the document that this is a compliance guidance letter. Fraser, I think this was the one that you might have had too. That tells you what has to happen to get this airport to here. And all of the steps that have to do, there's a lot of work that has to be done there. But to even get to this point, we need to have an agreement, and Mr. Mayor is correct, it starts with a resolution. And then you go from there.
So I do want to reiterate that I want this to be an action committee more than just a discussion committee. I think we all have the same common goal in place, so with the expertise of this panel from Mr. Manley, his legal background representing obviously Angel Fire Resort and also a member of our community, Mr. Lehman, Tillery, Fraser, Mr. Davis, Jackie, all have extensive experience with different airports. How do we see, besides for our business plan? I think we understand where we need to start, the resolutions, the MOUs, that sort of thing. Moving forward, how do we, as a committee, best see putting together this business plan? Mr. McBee.
Mark, to your previous experience with regard to bail. I don't think any one of us here, correct me if I'm wrong, has had experience transferring an airport from a governmental entity to a governmental entity.
Right.
Nor have any of us have a lot of experience developing and or putting together a business plan for an airport. When I was thrust into the operational aspects of this small airport, my background was just purely a professional pilot and then industrial construction management. Those two things dovetail to, you know, an opportunity to at least progress to some degree operating that airport. But nonetheless, my background does not facilitate or does not present itself with a lot of expertise as far as taking an airport to where I see this airport could go. So, given that, and unless anybody else can step up and say, well, I do have the experience, your background with regard to those people involving someone who does have that level of experience to come in and guide us, help guide us, putting together that business plan and being perhaps the point man or point person with regard to spearheading this whole operation through. Is that something that, do we think we should entertain? I would say yes.
I have to agree, and I bet you what you're asking, is we bringing in consultants,
Yes.
yes, and I think so too.
A question, ultimately, who's gonna be running the airport? Will it be an FBO?
I mean, that's where I see it going.
So is there a possibility of getting them, an entity in here as soon as possible and let them do what they want? What they need to do with this airport to make it advantageous for themselves. And get them in here early in this process.
I would agree with that. I mean, does it,
Probably have to go through an RFP process, wouldn't you?
yes,
Whatever we're taking, it seems like if they're gonna be the ones running it. This stage of the game, it'd be a good idea to find out what they would need.
and I guess I don't, and I just wanna make sure we're not putting the cart before the horse
Well,
too.
I know, but still, it's.
Oh, I agree, I mean, that's a big piece of it, and that's why we wanna definitely,
I think, Bert, that's gonna be the ultimate goal, is to actually have a private FBO, but in order for them to put together either a proposal or for us to put together an RFP, we have to get through the step of first,
Yeah,
getting the airport through to the operational responsibilities being put forth by the village, or being taken over by the village.
I'm just trying to shorten up this process, so I just want to.
So part of the RAISE grant, we've been in contact with Advanced Air, who flies throughout the state. I believe there is some interest in them becoming the FBO at some point. However, I think the charter service that we're sort of in negotiations with them on this. It's gonna be a sort of a test period for them. To sort of see what the state of the airport is, what's gonna be needed, whether it's something that they're gonna wanna take on as the FBO. You know, you're right, there is a required RFP process that, you know, I mean, the resort itself submitted RFP several times. I guess it's been 2 years now. And it was just sort of hit some impediments along the way, and that didn't work out for us at that point. It's not something the resort's really, upon reflection, interested in doing now, but you know, at least getting those charter flights in and getting advanced, familiar with the operation could help. And I would fully expect if you know, if this thing's gonna work, that they would wanna, that they're gonna know and would want to respond to an RFP, whether it's one from the village or one from the county, depending on timing.
So getting back to the consultant, I guess one of my largest fears is that we have this level of expertise in and amongst ourselves here, which does not fully encompass that which is required to take over an airport. And my biggest fear is that we hire a consultant and the consultant goes, okay, guys, here's what we think you should do. And none of us still have that expertise to get that done. I think if we're going to hire a consultant, we need somebody who can get it done. Present to us along the way how they're going about it, so that we can provide advice and dissent as necessary, in defense of the village. But what I don't want to see is a plan presented to us, and then none of us can really act on the plan, and it goes into a drawer and nothing happens. And we spend money on a consultant without any results. So, my hope is that we can all cooperate, as we said early on in the meeting, but that somebody with that level of expertise can come in and spearhead this operation and get this done as fast as possible.
Well, the number of people on this committee, I mean, do we have any? Do we have any context? Do you all know? If
So that's why I was looking at you.
Yeah,
Going back to Vail, right?
Yeah,
You know,
and I, you know, that
I
was
don't have those contacts.
25 years ago.
Oh,
You know,
okay.
but I was just the punk lawyer for the resort trying to get commercial carriers to, you know, come in to the flight. So I wasn't really involved. I was only involved, related to the resort and revenue guarantees and those kinds of things to get the carriers to want to come there. But
Jeff,
I, yeah.
I'm
No,
sorry.
no, go ahead.
Jeff, your thoughts on that matter is.
Jim, he's got something there, bro.
Yeah.
As I understand it, we've been actively encouraging operators to come here. But our discussion, Fraser and I, just a little bit ago, about the approach minimums is one of the drawbacks to trying to provide professional service in here. If you're an air carrier of any sort, whether it's just a feeder or it's United Airlines, with the kind of minimums that we have now, they cannot reliably count on coming in and out of here any given day of the year. The minimums are high because of the terrain. We can't get away from that. So you have to work around the restrictions on circling approaches in high terrain. And that's some sort of a precision approach that aligns the aircraft exactly with the center line of the runway on the approach. So that when the crew breaks out, they have to do a minimum amount of maneuvering of the aircraft in order to land appropriately. If you're circling an airport in high terrain, you're asking to make the 11 o'clock news.
So I can speak to that, Jim, and to Fraser. I think I heard your question. Over a year and a half ago, I contacted air traffic, spoke both with tech ops and with the air traffic division that does create the approaches, and began the process of looking for how we can change, maybe adding other types of approaches that are available out there. One of the discussions a year and a half ago was about changing the thresholds so we can get a landing north approach. So all of those things began to go down the road and were kind of shut down when the county decided to do what they did. So that stuff is there. It's still sitting on the table. The emails are still there. The folks to contact are still there. So Jim, that's one thing but again, we can't do that because we don't run the airport.
Right.
Yeah,
You can spend any amount of money on this.
Sure.
And you want to spend your money wisely. I'm not advocating that you put a full ILS system in here.
Sure, why not?
Sure, it's funny. That's why. But there are options.
Yes.
With some of the microwave
Yes.
systems. Where you can provide a localizer.
Yes.
approach,
Yes.
Which will have higher landing minimums than, say, a full ILS, the instrument landing system that big airports end up with.
So that,
But once the airplane's aligned with the center line of the runway on an extended straight-in final, you should be able to reduce the minimums to something that's more consistent with predicting that you will be able to get into the airport in more of the weather conditions that we have here. Especially when you're dealing with heavy rains or snow. you're dealing with reduced in-flight visibility that can make circling approaches really challenging.
If you even had a certain approach approval. Fraser, to back up with your second part of that, finding that person, meaning an entity, speaking to Mark's also that does this.
Yeah, inter-transfer.
Yeah, that should not be a significant challenge once we have the will to do that.
Get the MOUs out there.
There's folks out there, talked a little bit, some of the folks at the academy about this that have interest and that work at, in Washington DC. So it's not a big deal to find out, hey, who did you go to? So that's just late work. Again, that's work, Mr. Mayor. That's a working group that says, hey, we're gonna take this by the horn and volunteer our time to get that squared away. That's my third leg of the stool, is the will to do it.
Yeah.
Is to get the work done.
No, I agree. I think that's what this committee's, proposed to do exactly. So just to keep us focused on the short term, I think Fraser's point on a consultant, I think, is something that we should all look at immediately. And given this group and even the audience participation, if anybody has any suggestions,
What exactly do we want the consultant to do?
I think help us draft the business plan.
And in order to draft a business plan, I'd like to see budget from village about what is available, and budget from the county about outstanding debts, outstanding grants, what kind of agreements are already in place that would be either a liability to that business plan coming from the county or otherwise.
Asset. No, I think, I'm almost certain that any consultant that those would be the first questions they're gonna ask.
Yeah.
And I think we can certainly give them that information. Again, the county, I've been before the county twice, just as a discussion item. They're in favor of this. Has been the sentiment from all the county commissioners and the county manager. They just want to make sure before they do this that it makes sense, not only for us, but for them. And we can get a list of all that, I'm sure, with Scott's help, Mike Provine's help, Mr. Gore's help. We can get all that from the county. But I'm sure that the consultants are gonna want to look at that. So, I mean, the business plan is what they've asked for, and I feel it is something that the village can spend money on hiring a consultant for this very reason. Mr. Gummer, I do have a question though. You stated you don't feel like this isn't gonna happen before December. What kind of timeline do you feel like we are looking at?
In my past experience, certifying new air carriers and certifying new aircraft to existing air carriers, people who have been in operation for decades, a year.
Okay, I like to have an end date, a goal in mind instead of a timeline working backwards. But it sounds like right now we need to. Well, I know that's what the county specifically asked for before they put it on an official agenda, voting discussion item, is a business plan. How we see it moving forward.
There's one item that Jeff brought up earlier that to me is I'm wondering if that should be a priority to find out, and that is that in between agree or cooperative agreement that could happen if the complete transfer takes a year, 2 years, whatever, what do we need to know about this other possibility of having some kind of a cooperative agreement where the Village of Angel Fire can start putting forward some of their wants, but the county still is an owner, but the village becomes a cooperating entity.
No, I think that's a great point. I'd love to see that happen too, and I also would like to have from the county. A better commitment than what they have currently. Before we start spending a bunch of money on this as well. But I do think, to their point, we agreed to offer them that business plan. I would like to take to the next council meeting, a recommendation from this committee. To hire a consultant. To help draft the business plan. And we start there. Meanwhile, we've got a lot of other homework that we need to be looking at options. I mean, there's some options that were just brought up today, this co-op agreement, for instance.
An MOU is an MOU, Mark, is an MOU something? Yeah, I know it's not as legal a document as a resolution, but is an MOU as binding as like a promise with this?
It's all gonna be dependent on what's actually the words on the page. I mean, I've seen. MOUs, you can just drive a truck through, and then others that are very tight and enforceable, so it really is gonna be dependent on. What the stakeholders want, and what they can agree to, and then it would be up to the lawyers to make sure that the language reflects it.
I feel more comfortable with a recommendation to the council about hiring a consultant if we had something in writing and signatures from the county.
Yeah, I mean,
second that.
yeah, and I understand. I think everybody has the concern, right? But I do think that the county's intent to make this happen, I think they want it off their books.
Yeah.
And so I think we can be, pretty comfortable that they're gonna move forward as, and support the process. But I mean, I see the point. I mean, it makes a lot of
I'm
sense.
not opposed to it.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to. The consultant. I actually think it's not gonna be that difficult to put together a business plan that would pass county muster
Right.
with regard to annual operational expenditures, et cetera, with the airport, although obviously a consultant would be good with that. My view on the consultant would be someone who would spearhead the bureaucratic process. That's where I think this thing is gonna get bogged down. And could be that extended period of time. Jeff, I'm all ears to you over here. I think where we could really stumble and fall on this is not pushing the bureaucratic process through. You and I have both talked about the wheels of the bureaucratic process spin very slowly. And I think that's where this thing, we could lose interest in it, it could get bogged down. Nobody gets clear direction on what they need to do to adhere to and satisfy the bureaucratic process in that 19-page FAA document. So if I were to be asked the question, where would this consultant direct his energies? I would say not necessarily to the business plan immediately, but to the bureaucratic process. And I think a very simple business plan could be put together by, I'm gonna throw your name in here, by you and I, as far as the monthly, and with Scott's help as well, with the monthly and annual operating expenditures of the airport and income potential for the airport as well. So I would like to see that consultants focus be more on the bureaucratic process. Jeff, how do you feel about that?
100, well, can't go more than 100%, but wholeheartedly agree. If I may, especially for our audience, some of you are privy to on the second page of the guidance by the FAA on how you actually do this transfer. This is what we're up against. Review, so as inspector, they would review and must confirm that the proposed new airport sponsor, i.e. the village, is legally financially and otherwise able to assume and carry out the certifications, the representations, the warranties, the grant assurances, the covenants and other obligations required by an airport improvement plan, project application, grant agreements, and federal land conveyances. That's the job of consultant. And so that is why if this was an airline being certified, there'd be 30 people working on this.
Yeah.
So, cause each person on here would have to take that. Mark, you get the legal part. We won't put you, on the AIP. But you see where I'm saying? That's why I agree with Fraser, Jackie. I absolutely agree with what she said. The MOU should be binding or whatever kind of agreement we get in, because this is a lot of work for the county to turn around and say, oh, you guys are starting to make progress. Well, we really don't want to do this.
Exactly.
Well, again, our attorneys are drafting a resolution, not only for the village of Angel, but our attorneys are drafting one for the county. To give to the county, obviously, it'll be up to their attorneys and the commissioners, but I feel like if we have that resolution in place. Is an MOU necessary in addition to that? Would it hurt? No.
I mean, is it necessary? I don't know. I mean, the resolutions would be the thing.
Exactly.
If it was an either or.
So I-
you'd have the
again,
resolutions, but-
If we start checking off this list, again, I agree. The consultant, somebody that's gonna just keep their nose down and get the work done. The bureaucratic side of it is bigger. All I know is the county's asked us for a business plan. Sure. They're gonna wanna see that before they, tackle any resolution. So,
If I may, Mr. Mayor, they're asking for that because of this, because they're privy to this. This asks for that.
Yeah.
And so they're wanting a basic part one step.
exactly.
May I ask, sir, has the village considered hiring a person in creating an airport authority? That they plant themselves in an office in the village of Angel Fire, and that consultant, i.e. employee of the village. That's their job.
We haven't gotten to that
Point yet,
No,
okay.
No, again. That could be part of a business plan. We just haven't gotten that far.
Does hiring a consultant on a contract basis require an RFP?
It would, from my understanding, anything under $20,000. Would not. Anything under $20,000, we could just hire a consultant. $20,000 to $60,000, we would need to get competitive, not competitive, but we would need to get, it's close. Look at what services they're providing. And then make a decision. Anything over $60,000 would require an RFP.
Mr. Mayor, if I can. My name's Brad, and I bought a house in Angel Fire about a year and a half ago, and I'm a private pilot. We've talked a lot about like the business plan for I think it sounds like more like focusing on commercial traffic, but I think there's a huge opportunity to greatly increase the small plane traffic as well. I can't tell you how many times I've canceled flights coming into Angel Fire because of hangars, which were brought up earlier. Ground transportation. There's if you don't have a car there, Carlos is like the one Uber driver. Snow removal. If the village could take over snow removal, maybe perhaps they have better equipment. And then just advertising in some of the smaller magazines. There's COPA and OPA. I think you could get a whole lot of just small private pilots interested in coming in. And I don't think that would take a whole lot of outside expertise to be able to come up with, greatly increasing the private pilots coming in like me.
So to your point, I totally agree that the small private pilot is just as much a part of this as scheduled air service. We want to see the airport successful on both sides. I'll also let you know that I have a list of no less than 10 people that have expressed an immediate desire to build a private hangar at the airport with a good land lease agreement. And, but they wanna feel good about the airport and its condition before they commit to an investment like that. And so they're in favor of the village because, we're just here. So to your point, snow removal, management, everything, we're here. It's right in our backyard. It's less than a mile from our public works facility where where all the snow removal equipment is stored. I can also say too, though, to your point about advertising, we have a glut of lodgers tax funds that we can use. Not only, we could set up a visitor center inside the airport, we could use that money to advertise that airport. We have the support system locally. If the airport is in our control to spend some real money on it, that doesn't take away from the other needs of our village. And quite frankly, I feel like by doing so, we increase the overall GRT in this village. So the GRT that's generated additional GRT, we can focus on our priorities, our roads and infrastructure. And, but also bring our property values up, which that's where the county sees most of their revenue. So again, it's a huge win for everyone if we do this correctly, to your point.
Jim?
That's a point well made. Typically, those of us who have airplanes have cash we can spend, all right? But there's a side of the private operators that you really don't want to ignore. And that's the guy with his $20 million private airplane. And when he gets off his airplane on the ramp out there, we got plenty of runway for it. We don't have real good taxiways for bigger airplanes in places. But the airplanes can come and go. He gets off his $20 million or $40 million airplane and he walks into 1982 when he steps inside.
I think we're all well aware of that. And again, that's
We
my
need to do
experience.
that perception thing.
Yeah.
Quickly.
That's my experience with
Sooner
the
the better.
airport. And then again, that's one of the reasons that it caught my attention is my experience with the airport is oftentimes picking up those people that get off that $20 million airplane
Right.
and they're walking through mud and snow and there's not a restroom available to them after they just get off an
And
airplane.
the thing is, the people that are with them get the same impression. Usually those folks travel with their buds.
It
Yeah.
sets a bad example.
And
Oh,
so
I'm
there's,
well aware of that.
it's a situation where we need to do some dress up to the facility so that when people do get there for the first time, it's a better impression for them. That's probably one of the smaller expenses we've been talking about.
And again, and I appreciate that. And again, I'm 100% on board with that. I want to see development out at the airport. I really feel like if the village takes that over, I think in 2 years, you'd see 10 private hangars and hopefully more additional public hangars. But to get there, again, the point of this meeting, I really feel like I want to stay focused on next steps. And I don't want to say. All I can say is I feel like the village of Angel Fire can't do any worse. We can only.
Well, that's a dubious distinction.
That's right.
Yeah, for the record, my name's Tony Cortano. I don't live here full time, but we've been here since I guess 2007 up on Norte Road. I am a pilot for JSX. I am not a representative. I need to make that clear that I'm not representing JSX in any format at this meeting because I don't have that kind of authority.
Tony, please explain who JSX is.
JSX is the old Taos Air Shuttle. We operate Embraer 145s. They go into Taos on a regular basis. Out of Dallas, Austin, Las Vegas, and the West Coast somewhere. Recently, they've also, I believe, have gotten grant from the state of New Mexico to do service. I believe it's twice a week. I don't have my iPad. Didn't think I would need it. They go from Taos up to Boulder, BJC in Denver. Provide essential air services and I think they've gotten a grant from the state of New Mexico. At least for a year, that they will be doing flights twice a week on a scheduled basis. Yeah, I think it would behoove whoever runs the committee or consultant, or whoever it is to talk with the county of Taos. And I just happened to look on my phone. It looks like Taos Aviation Services is the only FBO there. I'm not sure that that's who we use or not. But you would probably, instead of spinning, redoing the wheel, rebuilding the wheel, is to talk to these folks. Go down there, have lunch and say, hey, what do you guys provide? I know that normally from JSX standpoint, they've got rental cars with Go Rental. As soon as people get there, I know that Taos Ski Valley actually, I believe, built the new runway down there to get people in there, on a regular basis. So I think you could glean a tremendous amount of information by just going down there and talk to those folks or Taos County and say, hey, how do you guys do this? Who knows? Maybe Taos Aviation Services would wanna run the FBO here. They're close enough. And say, hey, what does it take to run this thing, and you guys be the FBO? You wanna make sure, as Jim was saying, when some guy comes in here in his G5 or whatever, when he rolls on up, you wanna make sure that their service is provided, whether it's rental cars or anything else, and get them there. And I'm sure that the Taos Ski Valley is doing that, is when you land there and you've got to go to Taos Ski Valley, that there are cars or shuttles or something else to provide that service. Yes.
So we have actually, as part of just putting some things together for a business plan, some opportunities, we know rental cars was a big part of it. Currently, we don't even have a courtesy car at the airport.
Right, you need that.
We need that, rental cars, we've had discussions with, what was it, drawing a blank on the name of the car rental company in Taos.
Wheeler.
There's Wheeler Peak Rentals, and then there's
No,
National.
there's a National.
National.
It was a bigger firm. They're happy to leave a couple of cars here and then add to that. All the paperwork can be done online. They just need a commitment from someone to be there to accept the paperwork and hand over the keys.
Well, I know that JSX uses Go Rentals, in all their locations where we go.
So we
They might, they may have a representative down there and say, hey, I'll come up there, you tell me when the flights are coming in and I'll. get
Yeah,
you
that's a
cars."
big part of our business plan. I mean, we understand those are the things that go along with the airport. But I do want to take away, again, I would like to make some kind of recommendation to council. The other thing is, I don't believe in this fiscal year, we don't have anything budgeted for an airport consultant. Now, that's not to say we don't have the money that we could find, we'd have to do a budget adjustment. But I really feel like that's, before we start looking at FBOs, let's find a consultant to help us get us the commitment from the county in a more binding manner before we start spending the money. But yeah, I think we need to look at anybody that would be willing to, I mean, the resort made a proposal for that they would be the FBO a couple of years ago. There's that option. There's the Taos Aviation Services, and obviously Advanced Air that's gonna be hopefully flying in here later this year. So again, all excellent points, and I think we all are in agreement that those are the type of things that we need to look at this way.
My trust level is pretty low. I would like to see
I'm sorry, your trust level with who is very low?
with the county.
Good.
I would like to see maybe an MOU is less legally binding than a resolution. I really would like to see something in place, signed in black and white, that says, yes, this is what we want to do. And the village has to provide this, and the county has to provide this. Short, sweet. I don't know if that can take the place of a resolution. Mark, is that?
Why don't I do this? Why don't I run it past our legal counsel? Mr. Davis?
Attachment B to that document that Jeff was reading about, the direction guidance, there's attachment B that's an assignment and assumption agreement. That's got what the FAA recommends for us to all agree to. Doesn't say that the FAA agrees to it yet, but I think that would be one
Yeah,
suggested kind of document. It's possibility that that would be the one that we could sign early and say, this is our intent at least.
And I agree wholeheartedly that again, it's only been discussion item at the county. I would like to have some documentation as well before we start spending a lot of money. Scott.
Yeah, I'm sorry, just for my clarification, if the end goal is to have a professional private FBO, why is a transfer of assets needed to the village in the first place? I don't understand the definitions of, transfer of assets and, see what I'm asking, Fraser? If the end result is the FBO and you're gonna give up control in management to a private FBO, why does the village have to get involved in the first place? Why can't it just go straight from the county to an FBO? We'll do an RFP process again.
Can I speak to that?
Yes, sir. Please.
Scott, an FBO is not a public entity that sponsors an airport under FAA guidance.
So those grants.
For whatever purpose that entity, an FBO is simply a business that operates kind of the daily functions of the airport.
It's like a restaurant, Scott.
I understand.
It'd be a restaurant operating on the airport.
Like, yeah, almost like a chain, right? You got a master and so it's different with because what we're talking about here is, let's use the word responsibility. Responsibility is gonna lay on the village. An FBO will come in and they'll get daily operations done. Does that help? Does that make sense?
So who assigns liability?
The liability is of the village. It's,
Yeah.
the liability is of the sponsor. That's the FAA's.
All right, I understand.
And I would just add, if the county was actively doing this, we wouldn't be having this discussion.
Right. Correct.
That's the long and short of it.
I'm sorry for the interruption.
No, it's not an interruption, it's a valid question, but I just want to point out that. If the county was actively pursuing what we're looking at pursuing, we would gladly help them in any way we could.
So if you, I apologize, Mr. Mayor, but if you take, Ms. Frazier's, sheet, do you have a copy of it already? Okay. If you look at that, and you look at the responsibilities, how much of that responsibility is not being addressed by the county? That's their responsibility under FAA guidance. There's a couple things on here about, an adequate FBO. And the FBO might want to come in and change the furniture or whatever, but they would still have to get, the authority would lay under. So this might help you kind of address, check the box, who owns what? Most of this is owned by the county and not being addressed.
And there's two separate entities you deal with all the time, the private side of the equation, which is what we're talking about. And then you deal with their areas of expertise and it's sometimes a juggling act.
So, and so it's not to that point, but when you mentioned juggling act, I just want to stay focused on our next steps. And I think, we can do juggling act, I think we can do both. I'll talk to our attorneys to see what they feel comfortable with. If we can get this agreement signed by the commission, that Lawrence pointed out, if they would feel like an MOU would get us started until we can get a resolution, I'll definitely take that up with them right away. In the meantime, I think it's okay to start looking for and having discussions with consultants and get proposals. We don't have to make any commitments. But at the next meeting, I would like to have some options of who, if we have any. And I would just ask each committee member to see what they can drum up. I think the more options, the better. And again, we'll focus on getting something in writing from the county before we start spending village dollars on something that may or may not happen. So, again, I appreciate all the discussion and all the questions. And I think it'll all find its place in this process. And I think we all truly have the same end goal in mind here. And I just want us to stay focused. And I would ask that we schedule a meeting if possible. I'd like to go ahead and try to schedule a meeting for 2 weeks from today at the same time. And circle back to these questions. Jackie, I'll have for you with the county's cooperation, a printed list of all grants pending and being applied for and where we're at in those phases. I'll have an answer from our attorneys on how they feel best to proceed with the county, whether that's an MOU, if this document, and forgive me, I don't have it in front of me, would suffice. We'll need to get some council input and their comfort level moving forward with the county as well. But I think if anybody wants to add to that between now and 2 weeks from today, and quite frankly, if everybody's available, if not in person by Zoom, to keep this thing moving forward.
I just had one overview thought of, I keep seeing like there should be a big whiteboard or something with markers and stuff and put up like, what do we think are, where you can move stuff around, but okay, what is the very first thing we need to do? And you just listed that, but for everybody to see, I mean, it could be something on paper or on the, that everybody could get on their computer. But that way people can stay focused and go, okay, so these things have to happen before any of this has to happen. Or these guys want this information, we don't have it yet, so we need to get this information over there. Because to me, it's a complex thing. But I guess I'm kind of visual, it would help to see all those things on one,
So you're looking for an org chart. You're looking for an org chart, in essence,
some kind of chart. I couldn't tell what you're
or
saying.
organizational chart.
Organization chart,
Sounds
yeah.
like a job for a secretary, which you mentioned we need.
And I think a consultant would also help us design that chart, and there'll be moving pieces. I will say too, though, that we're doing, we've got several great active committees inside the village right now. This one will be one that'll also be reporting not only to council, but to the comprehensive plan committee, because this is a big part of the village's comprehensive plan moving forward. And so we're bringing a lot of information. So not only will this committee have that, but it's gonna funnel into larger plans for the overall community. So yes, we're working on that sort of thing. Obviously, it's great for public information to see where we're at in the processes. But again, until we clarify those processes, I just want to continue to work 2 weeks at a time for up to the next year until we get this thing on autopilot, to keep the ball moving forward. I don't want to lose interest. I truly feel like it's best for the village of Angel Fire as well as the residents of Colfax County, in general. I think it's a win-win across the board, but it's gonna be up to us in this committee to keep it moving forward. I'm not opposed to hiring the people, the professionals that we need to make that happen. And again, I think it's gonna start with the consultant. I think we've all agreed to that. Mr. Joel?
Hi, Mr. Mayor. So I'm Joel, I work for the airport. My question is if FBO does come in, this might be a little far-fetched, but if they do, what does that mean for the current employees such as me and Scott right now with our position at the airport? I'm just
So
curious.
I'll just say that my discussion with the county, and I've assured the county that we would assume, we would be responsible for the current employees.
Okay,
So in any transfer, we'll also be taking on the employees.
okay.
With or without, I can't imagine a scenario where we wouldn't need the help.
Right. I was just trying to
So I don't want
understand the process.
your jobs will be safe in this transfer.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I know that the village is interested in taking it over and the county is interested in getting transferred over. But what was the proposal from the county to do that? Have we heard from that
No.
says we're gonna sell it to you for X amount of
We
dollars?
haven't got into that negotiating. Quite frankly, we've got a list of things we have to work through. Fraser's, SWAT actually helps address that, to start putting a number on that. I mean, I'll be honest. I think a good dollar value to give the county is 0.
If they're losing money,
They need to get it off their books, as Mr. Manley mentioned.
Okay,
We would be assuming that operating cost.
right.
So, again, moving forward for the residents of Colfax County outside of the Moreno Valley. Those dollars, it makes sense for them, for us to be managing that airport.
Yes.
So there hasn't been any negotiation or dollar amounts talked, but if I'm opening the negotiation, I'm starting to.
So what does the county think about that?
Well, they don't know that yet.
And again, that's for future, I think we're, again, that'll definitely come up. But yes, to answer your question too.
Scott, let me ask you a question. Do you think there would be anybody opposed if you and I spent a little bit of time together in regard to putting together I'll use this word, rudimentary business plan as a start, with projected revenues and current expenditures?
I don't object to that at all. No.
Neither do I.
So I think that might be a step that I'm willing to take with your help.
And I asked Joel to join us just for experience.
Oh, absolutely. Where we can just go together and put together a rudimentary start for a business plan. If you're willing to help on that too, you have the business experience in Humane that would help us as well. So sometime in the next week, you and I'll spend a couple hours together and we'll just put the outline of a business plan together. Expenditures and projected revenues that we can work. You and I both have that experience to what we know the airport can do. So we can build on that. That makes sense?
I think I love it.
Yes.
I think that's a great first step. So,
Okay.
so you'll be starting on, so Fraser, Glenn, Scott, Joel. We work together to start putting together, I mean, again, it's not a complicated process. You have the insight to do it, so.
I don't
It's certainly
think
not
we're
gonna
gonna
help hard
need,
to have it done.
yeah, I don't think we're gonna need a comprehensive business plan that perhaps a bank might need that's going to be
Not at this
lending out
point.
$2 or $3 million, that kind of thing. I think we just need a general outline of what we think the airport can do if we take a few steps.
All that raw data gets sent out monthly anyways.
Yeah. So, all right, so I'll commit to putting some time together and have a business plan that we think is presentable to the county at the next meeting.
So it doesn't sound like at this time I have anything to take to council, but I was. Again, like to ask everybody to reconvene 2 weeks from today. I want to keep this thing moving as quickly as possible. Again, my responsibilities will be getting a list from the county of all grants, pending grants, where we're at in those stages. Our attorneys look at what kind of documentation would be best and the quickest to get from the county that would assure us that we're in a position to start spending some money, chasing after this. Glenn, Frazier, Scott and Joel will start working on this plan. Does anybody else want to make any commitments to report back within in the next 2 weeks?
Mr. Mayor, we're all gonna try to investigate.
A consultant. Yes.
Okay.
And if I may, Lawrence Davis here with his experience with logistical and bureaucratic FAA, along with Jeff over there, I think would be a big help as far as looking at those consultants with regard to getting us through the bureaucratic process, which is, I think that's gonna be our biggest.
I agree.
I've been an FAA test pilot, so I have that experience of connecting to the FAA.
And then the resolutions, those are sort of in
Our
process.
attorney's drafting them now for both entities. And I'd like to have ours. To present at the next meeting. For a recommendation to council for approval.
And so the next council meeting is set for the 27th.
That's correct.
Correct?
Yes,
And so our meeting would be on the 29th.
correct.
So the resolutions, would they be ready to present to the council on the 27th?
No, I think it'll be the following council meeting.
Okay.
Okay, anything else? Well, with that, I just wanted to tell everybody, thank you for being here and in 2 weeks, this meeting.